This story comes from a book called Cold Case Christianity for Kids, which is written by a real-life police detective by the name of J. Warner Wallace. You can learn even more about how to think like a detective by going to his website for kids called casemakersacademy.com. Jeffries clears his throat and says, "All right, so far we've talked about our 2 goals for this training. Number 1, to teach you to think like a detective. And number 2, to get you interested in police and detective work. I've told you that using our minds and looking at evidence is more important than technology, and I've started to explain that we cannot assume anything when we start a case. And of course, we did a tour of the station. Now, take that skateboard you have there." You and your friends look surprised. "Who owns it?" asks Jeffries. Hannah says,
"A girl called Zoe. Daniel said so."
Jeffries doesn't answer. He just looks at Hannah. Hannah thinks for a moment and then says,
"But I guess we don't know that for sure."
"Bingo, you're a quick learner," Jeffries points at her. "To be a good detective, you can't start with your mind already made up, right? You can't start by assuming you know something, and you can't assume you know who owns that skateboard." The students all nod. Jeffries folds his arms. "Okay, can anyone think of another example of assuming something?" Jason, the boy from the other school, raises his hand. The girl next to him is just quietly watching the whole time. Jason speaks confidently. "Well, my next door neighbours invited me to their church, but I didn't go because they said that Jesus did miracles like he walked on water. But miracles can't happen, so my neighbours are just assuming that Jesus did miracles, right? They're being know-it-alls, aren't they?" Interesting," replies Jeffries. Jason looks pleased with himself. And then Jeffries says, "But you actually might have it backwards there." Jason is surprised. "Huh?" Jeffries walks toward him and asks, "How do you know for sure that your neighbours haven't checked the evidence?" Everyone looks confused. Jeffries sits on the edge of an empty desk in front of Jason and looks at him. "Maybe your neighbours aren't know-it-alls. Maybe they're not assuming Jesus did miracles. Maybe they've done some research, looked at the evidence, and have decided he did miracles. Right? So maybe you're being a know-it-all by assuming they haven't checked it out. Actually, maybe you're being a know-it-all by assuming that miracles can't happen. Have you checked that out for yourself?" Jason thinks for a moment and then says, I never thought of it like that. But I mean, miracles are impossible, right?" Jeffries looks around the group. "Remember our lesson for today, we need evidence before we decide anything. As detectives, we don't start with our minds already made up. We're not know-it-alls. We do not assume. We always start with an open mind." Okay, Jason says and stares at his desk. "But I'm glad you brought up this example," says Jeffries, trying to encourage Jason. "As a matter of fact, it's a lot like a detective case. So today we already have 2 detective cases we can think about. The case of the mysterious skateboard and the case of Jesus' miracles. Both of them quite interesting. Let's just talk about miracles for a minute. Cadet Jason," Jeffries says, reading Jason's name tag. "Why do you and some other people think that miracles are impossible?" "Well, I've never seen any," Jason says. Jeffries stands up, turns and walks slowly back to the front of the room. "Really? Well, let's think about that. When people talk about miracles, they're usually talking about things that are not natural, aren't they? Miracles are things that don't follow natural laws, like the law of gravity, say. If Jesus walked on water, it was not a natural thing to do. He was breaking a natural law about floating and sinking, right?" Everyone nods. Where is the detective going with this? "So, miracles are not natural, and some people think that everything in the universe can only be natural. Only natural things can happen." "I think that's me." Jason looks up at the detective. Says Jeffries. "Oh, by the way, this is another definition for your sheet. See the word naturalism? Naturalism is believing that there is nothing real except natural laws and atoms and chemicals. Naturalist people don't believe in God because God is supernatural. But, Cadet Jason, think about this." Jason looks up from his sheet. "These same naturalist people cannot explain how the universe started. You might think you've never seen a miracle, but you're living in a miracle. We all are. It's called the universe." Jason's eyes go wide. "The universe is a miracle?" "Sure it is. Think about it. Scientists say that our universe began from nothing, out of nothing, and for no reason, it suddenly just started with a bang. Daniel looks confused. What do you mean, nothing? Oh, I mean, nothing. No rocks, no water, no gas, no light, no stars, no atoms, not even any laws like the law of gravity. No seconds, no time, nothing. And it wasn't like there was a huge space waiting to be filled with stars. There was no space either. Nothing means not a thing. So there's only one way that everything could come out of nothing. A miracle, Jason mutters. Exactly. It must have been a real, actual miracle. We are all living in a miracle.
I kind of understand,
says Hannah with a frown. Detective Jeffries picks up the skateboard. Look, did this skateboard create itself? He asks. Oh, I'd like to see a miracle like that, says Jason. Everyone laughs. Wouldn't that be great? Asks Jeffries. But no, we know that skateboards can't create themselves. They don't just pop out of nowhere. They're made out of stuff like wood and plastic and metal, and they're made by somebody. That's the normal, natural way, right?
Yes.
But when the universe was made, all the stars, the planets, the galaxies, even light and all the laws, everything was all made out of absolutely nothing.
Aha! That's not natural,
says Hannah, understanding at last. Exactly, Cadet Hannah. It's definitely not natural. It's supernatural, and so whatever made the universe must be supernatural too. Jeffries turns to Jason. So, Cadet Jason, if something or someone could do the miracle of making a universe out of nothing, do you think it could also do other miracles like walking on water? Hannah continues.
So, the miracles of Jesus were actually easy compared to creating the universe.
Yes. So we might not know just yet if Jesus did any miracles, but we can't start by assuming that miracles can't happen. Why? Because we're all living in a miracle. Again, I say this, we must carefully examine the evidence before we make up our mind. Jason is staring silently at Jeffries. Jeffries takes a marker pen out of his pocket. If I drop this marker pen, it falls down, right? What law is that? Jason nods and answers, gravity. Yes, that's the law of gravity, but who made that law? The government? All the kids laugh. Jeffries drops the marker pen but then catches it with his other hand before it hits the desk. See that? I'm able to stop the law of gravity from pulling this marker pen all the way to the floor just by sticking my hand in it, and I'm only a man. Do you think whoever made the law of gravity out of nothing could do more than me? Could the maker of the law overrule any law for a moment if they wanted to? All the kids nod. Jeffries looks at each of their faces. Anyway, just for today, all I'm saying is that we have to keep an open mind and be ready to listen and learn. Don't decide Zoe is the owner of the skateboard without looking into the evidence. That's assuming. And don't say Jesus couldn't do miracles just because you already decided that miracles can't happen. That's assuming too. You have to look at all the evidence first with an open mind. Got it? Most of the cadets nodded. Jeffries looks at Jason. Got it? Jason thinks for a moment, then nods. And that brings us to the end of your first lesson. So then, what is the number one tool in your detective toolbox on the sheet there? It's got the initials O-N. Daniel calls out. An open mind? Jeffries nods. Correct. If you don't have an open mind, you may never find the truth. Without an open mind, you can never be a good detective. A good detective starts each case with an open mind. Okay, everybody, for next time, see if you can find some evidence about that skateboard. And if you're interested, you might also like to find out some evidence about Jesus' miracles too. Start with the biggest miracle, coming back to life at the resurrection. See you next week, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Detective Jeffries.
You, Hannah and Daniel write on your sheets and then pack up your things and leave the room. The other kids are still at their desks writing. As you leave the police station, Hannah says to you and Daniel,
Learning to think like a detective is going to be even more interesting than I thought.